So yesterday, the new Formula 1 season got underway, and it's a season of new regulations, new teams at the front, new drivers at the top, and new rivalries, if yesterday is anything to go by. Now, apologies straight up if this is a mostly talking head video, but, you know, I've only got the use of one arm, really, at the minute. So the less movement I do with my left arm, the better, because the burns are, you know, starting to blister, and if I move too much, the bandage agitates it, and I just don't have the time or patience to, well, deal with it, basically. So yeah, I did post a tweet and a thing on my community tab about what actually happened, but that's where I'm going to leave it, because you can just read that if you want to know more. But anyway, let's get on with the video. Charles Leclerc finished on the top step, beating out Verstappen in a fair fight that was ended by the retirements of both Red Bulls within a couple of laps, which is something we'll get to in a bit, I guess. But Leclerc answered Verstappen at every turn. Every time Max tried to make a move, Leclerc had him covered. Max would go down the inside of turn 1, but Leclerc would get him back into turn 4, which makes you wonder, really, why Max kept trying those moves into turn 1, because Leclerc just picked up DRS and then sailed past him again. He just had him in his back pocket for the entirety of the race. A safety car period might have given Max the opportunity to snatch the win in the dying stages again, but Leclerc was smart in his restart, getting the car in a position where he could launch it out of the final corner, and that in turn left Max to squabble with Sainz as Leclerc then pulled a gap. Now, some Max fans in the viewer base will be quick to go, but he had a bent steering arm, he had this, he had this, he had this, he had this. But the fact remains that even in the first 10 or 15 laps, Leclerc was completely in control. And there were a couple of moments from Max under braking into turn 1. Lock up here, cooked brakes there. It was scrappy driving. Again, why keep trying into turn 1 when there was a DRS run into 4? Now, Max did get a couple of helping hands. Leclerc had a slow in-lap for one of his pit stops. They had trouble with a wheel at another pit stop, or that same pit stop, I really can't remember. But the fact remains that when Leclerc got in front, he stayed there and drove brilliantly. Even with Max not suffering from a bent steering arm, he was getting quite angry over the radio. The balance was off. He was screaming that he wasn't going to do what the pit wall said on the outlaps, and then claimed he would have got Leclerc if he'd been able to push straight out of the box like he wanted. But then again, it sounds a lot like before. You know how Hamilton's radio was the one always being broadcast? Well, now it's Max, so it just makes him sound like a whiny bitch. Not saying that he is, by the way. I know people will hear what they want to hear in these kinds of videos, but I know how people think. And with the checkered flag almost in sight, both Red Bulls fell victim, we think, and it probably is the same problem. Both cars just turned themselves off as if there was actually fuel available, but no fuel actually going into the engine. So basically, TLDR, fuel pumps went. Right, so the fuel pumps failed. Red Bull could just fix that for Saudi Arabia, right? Well, actually they can't. That fuel pump is a spec part brought in by the FIA to try and stop what happened in 2019, well, allegedly what was going on in 2019 with Ferrari. You know, the story of how they were trying to squirt more fuel through the system when the sensors weren't looking. The actual responsibility on fixing this part lies with the manufacturer, not with Red Bull, and McLaren also had issues with this same part. They had to swap theirs out, or at least run checks on them between qualifying and the race. And the FIA actually gave special dispensation to the teams after the race in Parc Fermé to make sure that theirs were all working properly and doing their intended job as well. Formula 1 has switched to an E10 type of fuel this season, basically the same stuff that you can buy at any petrol pump around the country. And maybe Red Bull and McLaren's fuel suppliers have just got something wrong in the blend, as it was both Red Bulls that fell to the same issue, with McLaren having to do some stuff to theirs after qualifying, as we've already mentioned. While the third retirement for the Red Bulls, or AlphaTauri in this case, but it's still the same family, that was for Gasly, but his was an unrelated problem. Hamilton and Russell managed to salvage a result out of nowhere despite being off the pace for the majority of the weekend. Well, I say the majority of the weekend. It was all the weekend, wasn't it? But their car is suffering badly from this porpoising thing. Now, the rumours are that Mercedes might be able to bring somewhat of a fix, or maybe even a total fix, to Australia in a few weeks' time. But that's a wait-and-see thing. They might get it right, they might not, which has basically been the case for everybody over the course of these new regulations that have been brought in. The problem with the Mercedes is that it has to run higher ride heights to try and mitigate this porpoising effect, this bouncing up and down in a straight line. Now, the theory is that if Mercedes manages to get this new suspension upgrade that's rumoured for Australia, or maybe even do something to the floor, they can get rid of this porpoising entirely and get on the same pace as Red Bull and Ferrari. And they've also got this hide pod concept as well, which is supposed to compensate for a lack of engine power, which, you know, makes sense really. The Mercedes is down on power, so reduce the drag as much as possible and gain as much as they can. Now, with 0.8 of a second or so lost over the Grand Prix, they reckon with everything working properly, they'll have gained a second, maybe more, which might actually put them in front of Ferrari and Red Bull if, you know, like I say, they get it fixed. But it's a wait and see approach. Now, low engine power does sound about right because Aston, Williams and McLaren are also struggling. It looks like that hide pod design is probably the best thing Mercedes can do for straight line speed. But the post-race reaction was funny. I did see a lot of Red Bull fans on Twitter, I know it's my fault for going on Twitter after the race, saying that, well, Lewis wasn't even in contention until the safety car came out. He got lucky with the safety car. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm going to try and fit this shoe onto the other foot. Now, obviously, I don't need to say this. That was a joke. But, you know, it's a motor race, and they went motor racing. You've got to be in it to win it. If your motor is still working at the end, you might gain a couple of places as people go off. In fact, being in it to win it and just, you know, capitalising on people's mistakes is as much a part of racing as being the fastest dude out front. You can be the fastest guy out there, but if you're not smart at the same time, well, I mean, look at Colin McRae. Unbelievably quick, but the amount of times he crashed. But the biggest winner of the day, and should have had driver of the day, was Kevin Magnussen, or as my brother likes to remind me, Magnussen. A man who didn't have a drive a couple of weeks ago, finishing 5th for Haas, and didn't care who he had a crack at either, even trying to have a go at Hamilton in the opening laps. Now, my brother lives in Denmark, and apparently the Danish are having an open-top bus parade for Kevin, as he's just won the World Championship, in their minds. Yeah, let's not pretend that British bias is just a British thing. And there's also Zhao Guanyu, and I hope I've pronounced that correctly, getting points on his debut for Alfa Romeo. And Bottas also scored points for Alfa Romeo as well. Bottas had a great qualifying, but once again he did Bottas things and just slipped down the grid, but managed to recover for a points finish. Alpine also got points as well. They seem to be okay, maybe not as good as they want to be, but they're doing okay as well. And again, you know, Zhao Guanyu, I forget how it is all written. You know, he did get points because of the 2 Red Bulls going out, and maybe even Gasly as well, but you still got to be in it to win it. So the big question is, has this new rule set worked? Well, we can't claim Formula 1 is fixed already after just one race, in the same way we can't call Charles Leclerc the champion after just one race. Now, this is part of the problem that F1 has. They want results now. They need things fixing now instead of looking towards the future. You know, 12 months from now, 18 months from now. I'd just like to think what would have happened if the 2014 rules had stayed the same. You know, Mercedes reaches the point of diminishing returns and everybody slowly catches up. So imagine if the 14 rules were still in last season. If, yeah, we'll pick last season as an example. Would the other teams have caught up? Interesting to think about, really. We will probably have to reevaluate after the summer break, but it is encouraging. You know, there was a lot of on-track action. Cars can follow closer. We've got a new team at the top, at least for now. But, you know, it might take 12 months, 18 months or so before we can categorically say yes or no to these rules working. And there has been a lot of shouting online in the last 24 hours that Ferrari is back and back for good, as Take That once sang. But, you know, we saw that in 2017 and 2018, and look what happened. There's still 22 races remaining for Ferrari to do the full Ferrari. But I don't think we're going to be seeing Charles Leclerc sliding helplessly onwards at one corner at Monaco and then slamming his steering wheel as he apologises profusely over the radio whilst everything gets bleeped out. But hopefully Ferrari won't do a Ferrari and they'll get their 17th Constructors' Championship and maybe even have Charles Leclerc or maybe even Carlos Sainz as their world champion come the end of the season. It's going to be an interesting season, I hope. And if Mercedes can get things fixed, then what, a 3-way scrap for the Constructors' title at the end of the season? I'd buy that for $1. So anyway, a quick review of the 2022 Bahrain Grand Prix. Did you enjoy it? Did you hate it? Do you like these new regulations? Do you hate these new regulations? Are you excited because you're a Ferrari fan and you haven't seen a win for a while? Leave any opinions down in the comment section underneath this video and get a discussion going, because it is, after all, why pressing issues exists. And while scrolling down, if you enjoyed this video, give it a like, and if you want to see more stuff like this, well, and anything I do here really on this channel, be sure to subscribe if you haven't already, and get that bell on as well, so you're always notified when a future video comes out. Massive thanks to the patrons of Patreon for the continued support. I actually used your money to buy an image for the thumbnail to this video, and if you want to help support the channel at a more personal level, predominantly for buying up images for videos like this, because they do cost quite a bit of money, you can help by following the link in the description box, where there's also links to my socials and also to Discord. So until next time, I've been AdmiralLaWind. I'm going to go and rest this arm now because it's been here for quite a while. I'll just have a chilled out rest of the afternoon, I think. So wherever you are, have a great day wherever you are and all that stuff. And I'll see you all again on Wednesday for another video. So until then, goodbye.